Good afternoon and welcome to this symposium on developing and supporting the curriculum. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Frank Coton. I'm Vice Principal for Learning and Teaching here at Glasgow University, and we're absolutely delighted to be hosting this event. The enhancement themes have been really important for the sector as a whole, and developing and supporting the curriculum really as a theme is almost a culmination of the last 10 years of work in the enhancement themes. I really hope, I don't want to say too much this afternoon because I'm going to hand over to the panel here, but I really hope that you find this session as useful as the many sessions that we've run on the enhancement themes over the years, and that it has an impact on what you as an individual do in your day job. And improves the experience for our students and for the staff in our institutions. With that, I'd like to hand over to the chair for today, Rowena Pellick, for Rowena to introduce the speakers this afternoon. So please enjoy your afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Today's topic, as you know, is professional bodies in relation to the development of graduate attributes in higher education. And just want to introduce the two speakers that we're very, very pleased to welcome this afternoon. On my left is Professor Mark Allison. He's Executive Director of Education at ICAS, the Institute for Chartered Accountants in Scotland. There he's responsible for ICAS's qualification system, university accreditation and examinations. And he also authorises the authorisation of employers' education systems. He's been an advisor to the UN Conference on Trade and Development and of the Task Force and Steering Committee of the European Common Content Group, which I don't know anything about, I have to say. But from 2009 to 2012, he was chair of IAESB, the International Accounting Education Standards Board, where he contributed significantly to the design and writing of the International Education Standards 1 to 8. And he is also a member of QAA's Scotland Committee. Professor Jim McKillop on my right was the Muirhead Professor of Medicine here at Glasgow University from 1989 to 2011. During that time, he was head of the undergraduate medical school and Deputy Executive Dean of the Faculty of Medicine. He is a member of the GMC, and has been since 2008. I don't know whether there's a little break while it was reconfigured, but so he's been a long-serving member of the GMC, where he's chaired GMC's Undergraduate Education Board and the Review of Good Medical Practice. He was a team leader for GMC's inspections of medical schools from 2003 to 2009. And chaired the NHS Education for Scotland Medical Advisory Group from 2004 to 2010. He was also chair of the Scottish Dean's Medical Education Group from 2005 to 2008. His clinical research interests were in acute medicine, nuclear medicine, and thyroid disease. And he has a particular interest in medical students with disabilities entry into medical practice. So, I thought that there would be many possible questions that might come out of the two presentations that we're about to hear. And amongst the many themes that we might like to explore are matters such as professional bodies' role in respect of more generic and softer graduate attributes, such as working with others, teamwork, intercultural communication, or perhaps we might wish to explore the balance between technical and academic skills and more less testable but vital skills such as empathy or emotional intelligence. And also maybe explore the distinctions between the responsibility of universities to set the academic standards of awards and of professional bodies to define what they need for entry into those professions. So obviously the questions are yours, but they're 3 possible starters for 10. So I'm now going to hand over to Mark Allison. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. I joined the QA Scotland Committee around 4 years ago as a representative of the Professional Regulatory and Statutory Bodies, the PRSBs. This is a group that actually never has met. The PRSBs, although we might have many things in common, are not actually a natural grouping. And I found my time on the QA Scotland Committee much as my own CPD, as well as almost as a public interest member. But having joined the QA Scotland Committee, what I've learned is the importance of the themes that have gone through over the last 4 or 5 years, and I've been able to keep both an eye on that and contribute a little to some of the thinking that's gone on. So it gives me great pleasure, as I say, to be with you this afternoon. When I was looking at the sorts of areas that the developing and supporting the curriculum are seeking to cover, it struck me that a review last year, Dr. Vicky Gunn from Napier University had run some regional roadshows around this theme. And in relation to the PRSBs, these were some of the comments that the academic roadshows had come out with. Words such as views need reshaped and changed, restrictive, partnerships difficult, unhelpful influence. And indeed, the final comment suggested that professional groupings, any involvement was probably not desirable, but maybe necessary. So I see my target here this afternoon as probably being a necessary evil, but hopefully through the conversation I can actually set out what I think many of the things that I'm encountering in my professional life are very similar to what's happening in academia. In the 25 years that I've been involved with ICAS, the supposed tension between the interests of academia and professional bodies and employers hasn't actually diminished. However, I've come to the conclusion that this tension is generally due to misinformation and a lack of engagement on both sides. ICAS believe that graduate students should have relevant skills for employment, and I guess you would think, well, there's nothing unusual in that. But that doesn't mean that these students should have the necessary knowledge in place on graduation. Over the years, it has been clear to me that more and more knowledge is something which is less desirable in a student than the capability to access and work with knowledge to solve unstructured problems. In the world of business, seldom does an employer or a client come to a chartered accountant for a solution because of a misunderstanding of an area of knowledge. Employers and clients want individuals who have the optimum balance of the far wider skill set, and that skill set would include intellectual, personal, communication and organisational skills. What I will try to do today is to intermix some of my comments on skills with how that ties into the curriculum. I appreciate you're very much looking at the developing and supporting the curriculum theme, so I do apologise if some of my comments are more based on graduate attributes on a theme which has gone on in the past, but I will try to join these two together. Professional regulatory and statutory bodies are a wide collection of groups, as I've mentioned. The setup and rationale for each group is very different. Some are there as a replacement for a government regulator. Some are there as trade bodies or member-focused organisations. And my institute is there effectively covering a dual role. We represent both the public interest and the members' interest. Where there is a conflict, we are required to support the public interest position, and that is in our Royal Charter. The pressures on the curriculum come from many different directions, and these, I think, are very similar in my institute to probably in academia. And it might help to explain some of this accreditation challenge that I think the regional roadshows were alluding to. My curriculum is subject to change annually. We issue a new syllabus every year, and why does it change so regularly? Well, we've got matters of knowledge and interpretation from new Taxes Act and accounting standards. There are demands for harmonisation and reciprocity with other bodies, both in Europe and internationally. There are EU and UK government laws and the annual audit of the Institute of Accountants to be complied with. So although I qualify all the auditors in Scotland effectively, my task in doing that is audited by the UK government. We're effectively acting on behalf of the government on this role. There's the influence of members' opinions, clearly very important in the members' body, employers' views on relevance, published research and emerging issues. And all the time we would like the university accounting curriculum to dovetail perfectly to our system. So we have a lot of challenges that I suspect are very similar to some of the challenges that particularly the group in the accounting curriculum within the university will also have. I am, however, going to try and avoid talking too much about accountancy today and actually try and give you some examples which are not particularly related to accounting. And so I've tried to avoid using too many acronyms or abbreviations. I'm going to cover a little bit of context, then to move on to the area of numeracy and literacy, talk about the international standardisation in the area of accounting, and then particularly, maybe of greater interest, the CA education and assessment model and some of the moves that we are making. My background, without going into all of those roles, it's a myriad of education roles. A visiting professor, I've been involved in setting up new degree programmes in Lancaster, Exeter and Birmingham in the last few years. I teach about 180 hours a year. So when you look at that, it probably looks pretty much like a non-researching academic role. And I am full-time and therefore I hope have some degree of empathy with some of the issues that my academic friends also have. Our institute, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Scotland, it's the oldest body of accountants in the world, set up in 1854. We regulate round about a third of our members in the area of audit, insolvency and financial services. Those are statutory requirements. But all 100% of our members we regulate through our professional and ethical standards. We also investigate and discipline members, as you might expect, and we teach, examine and qualify all our own chartered accountants. We're regulated by the UK and internationally. The roles of our members, however, might be something of a surprise to you. I think you might have a perception of what an accountant does. I think if you look at that slide, broadly a quarter of our members fall into each of those categories. And you can see there that a quarter of our members will work in private practice, helping small and medium enterprises, normally in Scotland, and individuals with their financial affairs. But a further quarter of our members will work in multinational organisations with very complex problems in large teams supporting other multinationals, and firms like PwC and KPMG would fill that role. About a quarter of our members work in industry and commerce in roles as finance directors. Again, you might expect that. But another quarter of our members have actually moved away from accountancy completely, and they end up as chief executives, presidents, or all sorts of other types of roles. And I think it's quite interesting just to consider within the CA qualification what makes that possible. And some of the skills that I'm going to go on to discuss, I think, might hopefully come through there as showing why a CA might be able to carry out those roles. Our qualification structure, and I won't go into this slide in a lot of detail, but the bottom level, the dark green, that is the level to which we offer exemptions to a university accounting degree. 5 subjects there, and it's called the test of competence. So when I accredit accounting degrees, that's the coverage. But of my students that start, around 70% do not have an accounting degree. And indeed, colleagues who work in accounting and finance departments in universities find it a frustration that many of their best students cannot get into CA training. And I think this is something I'd like to explore with you as to what are the reasons that so many accountants actually come from the far wider group of graduates that come through university. And particularly, I'd like to just concentrate for a minute or two on the background of the students and the types of skills that they have. A committee last week in ICAS looked at the exam results by students who had an accounting degree in red and students who did not have an accounting degree in green. And you can effectively, I hope, see there that students who don't have an accounting degree outperform students with an accounting degree by about 10 percentage points. And that has been true in ICAS for 20 years. Now, this must seem counterintuitive. What is happening in accounting degrees that makes accounting degree students struggle more with the exams compared with students from a far wider background? Now, there's certainly one colleague in the room who is from an accounting department, and Brian might wish to comment on that later. But I think for the others, I'd like to perhaps just concentrate for a minute or two on my thoughts on numeracy and literacy and the sorts of things that we are seeing coming through. Much of the professional training programme towards the CA tests application of core knowledge alongside a significant proportion of assessment on professional, ethical skills and behaviours. Employers have found that students with a better set of capabilities in these underlying skills needed of a CA produce the best and most relevant chartered accountants. They also, from that slide, pass the exams more effectively and more quickly. Employers of all sizes, not just large employers, but now quite small employers in Scotland, have set up testing and screening mechanisms for undergraduates, not based on knowledge particularly, but based on the applications of a wide range of skills. Instead, students from other disciplines are finding that they are able to start CA training far more easily than accounting graduates. A numerate law or arts graduate, almost a contradiction in terms you might think, and equally a literate maths or technology graduate do better in ICAS exams than the route you might consider. Our qualification has a broadly equal proportion of content which involves qualitative analysis and discussion compared to quantitative analysis and interpretation. So if I was to set one task to curriculum design in a very general sense, it would be to incorporate higher level skills in literacy into some elements of science and technology programs, but equally to try to incorporate higher level numeracy skills to some of the more narrative-based disciplines. Now, this is of course simplistic and not easily done, and neither for many students is it something they would wish to do. Students select a route for a reason. Often maths students will choose maths because they don't want to do English, and equally English students probably don't want to do a lot of maths. But for somebody who in their third or fourth year is starting to think about a career in business, and particularly in my area accountancy, if you're an arts graduate, having some degree of higher level numeracy, or if you're a science graduate, having some degree of higher level literacy, will absolutely place you as a very attractive student for an